Avatar, the other elements have one, if not multiple subbendings. So what if there are new unique ways right now that elite airbenders could manipulate air? The last one on this list is insane. So how will airbending evolve in the future? When a bender is skilled enough at bending their element, and or they find a unique and rare application for the element they're bending, it's referred to as subbending. The only true limit that benders face in terms of coming up with a new subbending art is simply time and effort. Seriously, there's just not that many people who are willing to master and then devote themselves to years of training different hypotheses that might not work in the end. But the reality seems to be that each element is much more versatile than one might think. And with the continuation of the show, perhaps we're only beginning to see the limits of what benders are capable of. So what amazing subbending forms are we likely to see for airbending? One circulating ability is sound bending, and this could be highly useful or outright devastating. Sound is really vibrating physical energy, and in this case is the compression and vibration of air. As the air is compressed, it carries energy with it that travels outwards in all directions. The bigger and thus more energy a wave of vibrating air has, the more pressure it has, and the louder it will be. While higher pitched sounds have more of these waves occurring each second, giving them a higher frequency. For an airbender to produce sound vibrations, it may not actually be that hard. All an airbender would have to do is compress any of the air around them and then watch the air ripple outwards all by itself. The thing that would make sound bending so cool and rather troublesome is depending on the loudness of the sound being produced, skilled airbenders could very easily rupture your eardrums, send opponents flying, simply burst your lungs from the sudden increase in air pressure, or completely rip you to shreds. Yep, that shockwave a bomb produces that levels a brick house is sound tearing it apart. Airbenders could also use sound bending for more subtle uses like long-distance communication. However, sound bending is limited as sound gets weaker the further it travels, so there's no chance of Aang screaming the Fire Lord to death from afar. Users would also have to be able to stop the air around themselves from being compressed so they're not hit by their own shockwave. This is where our second subbending art of the healing breath comes in. One very subtle thing that you may not have noticed in the last Airbender is how easily Aang is running around the Arctic temperatures of the South and North Pole in nothing but his airbending clothes. Seeing how Aang was awoken in early summer, and if their South Pole is anything like ours, that means that the average temperature would be negative 32 degrees Celsius. As cool as this may be, we know that this isn't a subbending art all by itself, as regular individuals have used deep breathing techniques to voluntarily activate their autonomic nervous systems, causing their bodies to generate heat to survive an extreme cold. And it seems that airbenders can only control oxygen when it's in its gaseous state and not when it's present in a liquid. So much for airbenders becoming bloodbenders in their own right. Not counting our last subbending art, this healing breath may seem very underwhelming. And that's because everything I've said up to this point is a complete lie. I mean, it might as well be, as airbenders are just too secluded and passive, never breaking from tradition, never daring to practice and invent new techniques that could be considered dangerous. New dangerous ideas get slapped with a big old forbidden sticker and thrown out the mountain temple window. While the other arts, like most weaponry, were urged to advance during the 100-year war, airbending missed its chance with its absence. Sure, you could say that spiritual projection and flying are air subbendings, but spirit bending is more likely just its own bending art that airbenders happen to be good at, while flying is just airbending. Really good airbending. But now with the new airbenders now acting as the world's police force or keepers of the peace, things are bound to advance for them, probably not in destructive ways. This brings us to our third and by far most horrific subbending art. And let me tell ya, this would be a lot worse than being hit by some lightning. Vacuum bending. Vacuum bending is actually the exact opposite of sound bending. Rather than compressing air together, airbenders would instead move all the air particles out of a given area, creating a space nearly devoid of pressure. If a person was to be caught in this space, the oxygen in their lungs would be immediately ripped out. If you were smart and held your breath, your lungs would immediately explode, as the oxygen would expand due to the lack of any external pressure. This would then cause massive air bubbles to be released throughout your body that would cause you to go into cardiac arrest, have a stroke, and die. But the real terror happens next. As your entire body decompresses in the this void, oxygen within your body will naturally expand, while at the same time your blood and bodily fluids will boil and evaporate, causing you to balloon to twice your size. If none of this instantly kills you, within just 15 seconds, deoxygenated blood will be delivered to your brain, rendering you unconscious and undergoing brain death in 1 minute. Tell me how you think airbending will evolve in the future down in the comments.